Hello, I am Ryan, founder of EarthHero, and today we're going to be hanging out with Dr. Andrea Neal with Blue Ocean Sciences, and really excited to have a conversation about the ocean, sustainability, and maybe what's in between those two. So I guess just to get started, I'm curious, and by the way, Dr. Andrea told me I can call her Dre, so we're going to go with that. So Dre, tell me if you wouldn't mind, how did this all happen? How did you end up in this world with not only caring about the sustainability in our planet, but specifically, your involvement with research in the ocean?
That's a big one. I'd say pretty much from day one.
Yeah, how did you know? What was that catalyst moment, or, what point in your life did you realize that this might be more than a passing passion?
If I go back and I look at the papers that my parents kept from school, every single report I ever did was on conservation. So from day one, that was just something I was interested in. And at the time, my big interest were the rainforest and more importantly, plants and botany. And I was really interested, probably in my teenage years, I started reading Mark J. Plotkin, who's an ethnobotanist, and he would combine understanding plants that people use for medicines with conservation. And I was really into that. I thought it was really a cool way of going in and helping a community, but and understanding very valuable resources and protecting them because they were then valuable resources. So it was kind of a unique perspective. And I went into school to study botany. I wasn't really into the ocean. I was really into plants and specifically medicinals and oils produced by plants. So I did that for a number of years. I worked in a medicinals and aromatics lab at Purdue University. I have degrees in agriculture, which most people don't know about me. I have both my undergrad and my master's and my PhD in agriculture. And it was during that time I was interested in unusual fatty acid production in sponges because they produce these very long methoxy fatty acids. And what's really interesting about sponges, it's not just the sponge that's creating these long-chain methoxy fatty acids. They have a relationship with microbial biomass. Microbes make one part of the pathway and the sponge makes the second part of the pathway to make this product. And the demo sponges that make these, almost 80% of their biomass are microbes. So it's just a really neat ecosystem within another animal. And so I was doing some research on that, trying to move into that field from my graduate studies to my postdoc. And I was diving down on reefs in the Florida Keys, and people were telling me these are the most pristine reefs you'll ever go to. They're gorgeous, they're wonderful. And we dove down to total devastation, just rubble, hardly anything left, no small fish species at all. It was just pure devastation on this completely pristine coral reef. And while there's many reasons this can happen, whether it's storms, human interaction, sunscreens, what was very clear is that there had been a massive impact on this very pristine place in the world. And I realized at that moment that I had to make a shift from what I was doing in land-based agriculture and understanding conservation from that standpoint, and I had to shift into understanding what we were doing to the ocean. And so I just started diving all the time. I became a scientific diver, and I volunteered on every project I could, became very knowledgeable about the area. And in time, because of my love of sponges, which pump a tremendous amount of water per day and are one of the primary things that are important for remediating coastal areas, I got into plastics and nanoparticles and understanding how do those very fine particles impact the environment.
So that was sort of the, that's fascinating about the sponges. I didn't know that. And, it's amazing how such a seamlessly simple and, I guess, relatively simple animal can have such a, big impact, not only on you personally, but the oceans as well that they reside in. So I think at least historically, a lot of people think about if you want to do something that's intrinsically good for the world, think nonprofit first, but now there's this big push for, not big push, but it's becoming more of a trend and has been for a while now, in terms of, you hear different terms, but conscious capitalism or social capitalism, but basically mission driven for profits. And that kind of leads me to the Blue Ocean Sciences, which it sounds like is your most active current effort that you're spending time in. Is that correct?
No, I actually have two active companies right now, and we went for profit in 2012.
Okay.
So, and there's a little bit of history behind that. We were a nonprofit, and we were sponsored by Eric Schmidt and the Schmidt Ocean Institute in 2011 to do a transatlantic study in marine plastics. And it was one of the most amazing expeditions I've ever been involved with, the most amazing amount of amazing researchers. And we had found some microbes in open ocean in 2011 that were candidates that could consume polymers as a sole carbon source. Huge, right? That means you can basically create, bioreactors that consume the waste plastics in your house and run all of the electricity in your house, right? Really cool stuff. And we had multiple institutes involved with us, including the Craig Venture Institute and Penn State University. And the problem was that when we got back to land, we couldn't raise the money to look at it. And the other problem was when we were at sea, I felt like we didn't have enough real-time solutions and real-time detection systems to look at those questions while at sea. We were saving everything, which gets really costly and consumes a lot of energy, both from saving all those samples at minus 80 degrees Celsius to shipping and everything else that takes for that process. So we tried kind of doing a soft capital round where we were like, well, okay, we want to fundraise for these detection systems, and no interest whatsoever. Detection systems were not sexy for a nonprofit, just too technology heavy. So 2012, we switched to for-profit. We became an LLC, and we did our first capital raise with no business background at all. And I did this. I put together this event in San Francisco where I invited investors in and showed them all of this fancy tech, but we just didn't have any business background. They were so interested in the tech, but we didn't know how to take the tech to a for-profit business opportunity for an investor. So we spent some years getting business savvy. And I thoroughly believe that you have to have competition in the for-profit marketplace for environmental solutions. If you don't have that, then you end up where there's monopoly in certain industries. Take seed production, for instance. We now have a monopoly on 80% of our seed production in the world by one company.
Yeah, that hasn't worked out necessarily so well.
No, and it's recent, and we haven't seen what the downward effects of that are. And our resources are so important that we need to have diversity in the marketplace.
So I guess, circling back to, you were talking about some of these excursions that you've been on. For some of us that maybe haven't been on an excursion like that before, what is the average length that you're out in the ocean? And what are give us some perspective of what that's like, what you're doing, and, does it always go as planned? I'm guessing not. And maybe some examples of that as well.
Nothing ever goes as planned. The excursions are usually about a month long.
Okay.
So they're really expensive to do. It's both a time donation from the people working with you, and they're expensive. And there's a lot of planning that goes into each stage of it. And, when you're out in the very middle of the ocean, no one's going to come rescue you. So you have to have a lot of concerns about the safety of your crew and what goes on. And any small, what would be considered a small accident on land could be a life-threatening accident at sea.
I guess another question when it comes to, because I get asked this a lot, just because of what I do over at, with EarthHero. And I would say a lot of people are like, Ryan, that's, it's absolutely great. I love the concept. The world needs something like this. We need to get away from bad products, but I don't have or want to make the time to figure out how to do that. So where do I start? How should I if I want to change, how do I do it? That kind of, mindset. And I'm sure you run across people like that too, whether it's friends or family, that you've always been connected with, but they just don't quite have that same understanding, that you do, of course, but just in general of how to go about it. So what are your thoughts in terms of that?
But like for my son's meals, for instance, I have these little bento boxes. I love them, and they're great for a number of reasons. They keep portions, so they're healthy from a nutritional standpoint. And even when we go backpacking and stuff, I use the bento box because it's the right portion for eating. And so it's both like a health factor as well as these are reusable and you keep them pretty much forever. I've been using the same bento boxes now since he was born. So it's 3.5 years we've been using the same bento boxes.
Yeah.
And they'll probably last until he's a teenager. They're well made, they're a heavy polymer, and they will last for a really long time. I only use glass containers for storage of foods, and this is mainly because of my own knowledge of phthalates and leaching of phthalates into food, and I just really try to reduce that as much as possible. And so those are just small changes in our house, but imagine baggies every day for your kids' food. It's a huge amount of plastic. And so just that one little change makes a massive difference. All the straws, that's becoming more mainstream. That's kind of super easy to do and low-hanging fruit. Coffee cups, that's another one. The only time I get caught is sometimes I forget to have a reusable cup in my car when I'm traveling. But I really do try to make an effort with that. The other problem with them is I lose them a lot. So, travel mugs can be like a blessing and also a curse. I save jars of things, like all of my jars for jelly and things like that, and I use them for food storage or to keep small things in, especially to keep ants from out of the house during hot seasons. And so I just reuse a lot of those things, and it just stops all of that storage issue. I think a lot of our reusable products are storage products.
So you're busy, you're doing these crazy excursions and researching like crazy and being a mom and probably having a little bit of time, for yourself as well on a good day. And what do you, and I guess this would be sort of my parting, question is, what do you, what advice do you have to people that, again, want to do better when it comes to living their everyday lives outside of, we talked a little bit about waste diversion and that type of thing, but in terms of how to live in a modern world and, the idea that you're going to have to buy things and consume things, what is kind of an overall approach? Do you mentioned buy with longevity in mind, but any other, I guess, advice you have to people that want to sort of accelerate their path?
So I think it's not only environment, it's health. So if you're thinking about your family's health or your health, it's a product that is going to reduce your risk for contamination exposure. And that includes products that are natural, no synthetics. And I always get caught up because I love my yoga pants. And it's hard to find yoga pants that don't have any synthetic polymers in them. And the other thing people don't realize about it, it's not just the health and it absorbing into your body. When we wash our clothing, we release almost 10,000 synthetic fibers into the washing machine on every wash. That goes into the wastewater, and those are fine micro and nano-sized fibers. So it's an environmental choice, and it's a human health choice to wear all natural products as much as possible, and well-made products so they last. And it's the sustainability of it, just trying to keep a product as long as you can, fix it when you can, and buy things you really love and ignore all the other noise.
Awesome. I think that's great feedback. Thank you. Well, awesome. It's been I love these conversations. I certainly, this one's been incredible. And I love the nuance that you add to it, just with these ocean excursions and seeing a different part of the world with how all of this relates to some of the most remote places on the planet, that
Yeah.
when it comes to the sustainability problem are just as much in the game as the rest of us, which is super important, I think, for all of us to know and understand. So thanks for sharing your insight, and
Yeah.
really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I love it. So keep it up.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.